I still don't know what it was, but every night I wonder, will it come back? The fear lingers, a shadow that never truly leaves. Each creak, each whisper, each flicker of light sends chills down my spine. The nights are long, filled with an eerie silence that is only broken by the occasional, inexplicable noise. I lie awake, eyes wide open, heart pounding, waiting, always waiting. The darkness holds secrets, and I am its captive. Will it come back, or has it never really left? The screen flickers with dim, eerie lighting, casting long shadows that dance across the room. The old TV, with its cracked screen and static noise, seems to be the only source of light in the otherwise pitch-black room. The atmosphere is thick with tension, every flicker of the screen making the shadows twist and turn in a macabre dance. Suddenly, a loud, blood-curdling scream fills the silence, piercing through the darkness like a knife. It's a scream of pure terror, echoing off the walls and sending chills down your spine. The scream seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, making it impossible to pinpoint its source. The camera focuses on a trembling hand clutching a flashlight, shaking uncontrollably. The beam of light wavers, casting erratic shadows on the walls. The hand is pale, knuckles white from the tight grip, and you can almost feel the fear coursing through the person holding it. Shadows dance on the walls as an unearthly figure lurks in the background, barely visible. The figure seems to move with the shadows, blending in and out of sight, making it hard to tell if it's really there or just a trick of the light. Its presence is unsettling, a constant reminder that something is watching, waiting. Its faint whisper echoes, "I see you." The whisper is barely audible, but it sends a shiver down your spine. It's a voice that seems to come from the shadows themselves, wrapping around you like a cold embrace. The words are simple, but their meaning is clear. You are not alone. Suddenly the flashlight flickers off, plunging everything into darkness. The sudden loss of light is disorienting, leaving you momentarily blind and vulnerable. The darkness is absolute, pressing in from all sides, and you can hear your own heartbeat pounding in your ears. A gasp, followed by hurried breathing as I whisper, "This can't be real. Who's there?" The words come out in a shaky breath, barely more than a whisper. The fear is palpable, each word tinged with desperation. The darkness seems to close in even more, and you can feel the presence of something just out of sight, watching, waiting. Fade to a calmer setting. It all began on a cold, silent night. The air was crisp, and the only sound was the rustling of leaves in the dark forest. I thought it was going to be a regular evening, just like any other. I had no reason to suspect that anything unusual was about to happen. But then, something strange caught my attention. A sound I couldn't explain. It was faint at first, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. I paused, straining my ears to catch it again. There it was, a soft, eerie melody that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Little did I know that sound would lead to the most terrifying experience of my life. As I stood there trying to make sense of the mysterious noise, a chill ran down my spine. The forest, which had always felt like a sanctuary, now seemed menacing and full of hidden dangers. I took a hesitant step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound grew louder, more insistent, drawing me deeper into the darkness. Every instinct told me to turn back, to run home and forget I ever heard it. But curiosity got the better of me. I had to know what was making that sound. With each step, the forest seemed to close in around me. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, and the once familiar path became twisted and unfamiliar. The sound was all I could focus on, guiding me like a beacon through the night. I had no idea what awaited me, but I knew there was no turning back now. The melody seemed to weave through the trees, echoing off the trunks and creating an almost hypnotic effect. I felt as if I was being drawn into a different world, one where the rules of reality no longer applied. Suddenly the sound shifted, becoming more urgent and chaotic. It was as if the forest itself was alive, breathing and pulsing with the rhythm of the melody. I could feel the ground beneath my feet vibrating, and the air around me seemed to thrum with energy. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it a ghost, a spirit, or something even more sinister? I had to find out, even if it meant facing my deepest fears. The night was far from over, and the true horror was yet to come. Show visuals of a quiet, dimly lit room with eerie noises in the background. The room is filled with an unsettling silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards. Add a sudden knock on the window, which shatters the stillness and sends a chill down my spine. My startled reaction is immediate as I turn towards the source of the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. The camera captures the tension in the air as I slowly approach the window, my breath visible in the cold air. As I reach the window, the knock comes again, louder this time, making me jump. I peer through the glass, but see nothing but darkness outside. The eerie noises continue, growing louder and more insistent. Suddenly I hear footsteps coming from an empty hallway, the sound echoing through the house. The camera follows my gaze as I turn towards the hallway, my eyes wide with fear. The footsteps grow closer, each one sending a jolt of terror through me. My breathing becomes shallow and I can feel the cold sweat forming on my forehead. The camera pans to a dark corner where a shadow seems to move, adding to the sense of dread. The shadow shifts and changes shape, as if something is lurking just out of sight. I take a step back, my mind racing with possibilities. The tension builds as the shadow moves again, this time more deliberately. The eerie noises crescendo, creating a symphony of fear that fills the room. The camera captures every moment, every flicker of movement, every sound, building the suspense to a fever pitch. Suddenly, a loud crash echoes through the house, making me jump and sending my heart racing even faster. I finally mustered the courage to shine the flashlight, and what I saw will haunt me forever. A figure, pale and lifeless, stared back at me, its eyes hollow, its smile twisted. My scream was drowned by a deafening silence, and before I could move, it was gone. The air grew colder and I could feel an icy breath on the back of my neck. I turned around, but there was nothing there. The figure had vanished, leaving behind an eerie silence that seemed to press down on me from all sides. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. The walls seemed to close in on me, and the darkness grew thicker. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the figure reappeared, closer this time, its hollow eyes boring into my soul. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure's twisted smile grew wider and it reached out a skeletal hand towards me. Just as it was about to touch me, everything went black. When I woke up, I was alone, the figure nowhere to be seen, but the terror remained. I still don't know what it was, but every night I wonder, will it come back? The fear lingers, a shadow that never truly leaves. Each creak, each whisper, each flicker of light sends chills down my spine. The nights are long, filled with an eerie silence that is only broken by the occasional, inexplicable noise. I lie awake, eyes wide open, heart pounding, waiting, always waiting. The darkness holds secrets, and I am its captive. Will it come back, or has it never really left? Gap 2S. Desperation drove me to seek answers. I began my journey by researching the history of the house, uncovering a series of chilling events that had taken place over the decades. The more I delved, the more I realized that my experience was not isolated. Gap 2S, I interviewed previous occupants, each with their own haunting tales. One spoke of shadowy figures that lurked just out of sight, another recounted the sound of footsteps in the attic, and an old woman described how she had been driven to madness by the constant whispering in the walls. Gap 2S. My nights grew more restless as I pieced together these stories. I started to notice patterns. Certain dates, specific times of night when the activity peaked. I set up cameras and audio recorders hoping to capture evidence. What I found was both enlightening and terrifying. Gap 2S. There were images of fleeting shadows, whispers caught on tape that seemed to speak my name, and cold spots that moved through the house as if they had a mind of their own. Each discovery brought me closer to the truth but also deeper into fear. Gap 2S. The encounters grew more intense. One night I awoke to find my bedroom door slowly creaking open, though I knew I had locked it. Another time I felt a cold hand brush against my arm, only to find no one there. Gap 2S, despite my growing dread, I couldn't stop. I had to know what it was that haunted me. The more I learned, the more I realized that some secrets are meant to stay buried. But now it was too late. The darkness had taken hold, and I was no longer just a victim, I had become a part of its story. Gap 2S. As I continue my search for answers, one question remains. Will I ever uncover the truth, or will I be consumed by the very thing I seek to understand? Gap 2S. The nights grew darker, the air heavier. I knew the time had come for a final confrontation. Armed with my camera, a flashlight, and a newfound resolve, I ventured into the basement, the heart of the house's darkness. Gap 2S. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the faint hum of the electricity. As I descended the creaking stairs, my flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the damp walls. Gap 2S. I could feel its presence, a cold, malevolent force that seemed to seep from the very foundations of the house. My heart pounded as I reached the bottom step, and there, in the corner, I saw it, a shadowy figure, barely distinguishable from the darkness around it. Gap 2S. My breath caught in my throat. The figure seemed to pulse with a life of its own, its form shifting and contorting as if it were made of smoke. I raised my camera, the lens capturing the chilling sight. Gap 2S. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The figure moved closer, its presence suffocating. Gap 2S. It spoke in a voice that was both a whisper and a roar, words that seemed to come from the depths of the earth itself. "You have trespassed where you do not belong. You seek answers, but you will find only despair." Gap 2S. The temperature plummeted, and I could see my breath in the air. The flashlight flickered again, and in that brief moment of darkness I felt an icy grip on my arm. Gap 2S. I gasped, dropping the flashlight. The room was plunged into darkness, but I could still feel its presence, closer now, almost touching me. Summoning every ounce of courage, I reached for my flashlight and turned it back on. Gap 2S. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the figure's ghastly visage. It was a face twisted in torment, eyes like black voids. Gap 2S. I knew then that this was no mere haunting. It was a manifestation of the house's dark history, a guardian of its secrets. "I will not be afraid," I said, my voice stronger now. Gap 2S. "I will uncover the truth." The figure recoiled, its form flickering. The air grew warmer, the oppressive weight lifting slightly. Gap 2S. I took a step forward, and it vanished, leaving behind only a lingering cold. I knew this was not the end. The darkness had retreated, but it was not vanquished. Gap 2S. I had won this battle, but the war was far from over. As I climbed the stairs, I vowed to continue my search, to uncover the truth no matter the cost. Gap 2S. For now, the house was silent, but I knew it was only a matter of time before the darkness returned, and when it did, I would be ready. Gap 2S. The days that followed were a blur of restless nights and anxious days. The confrontation in the basement had left me shaken but resolute. I pored over old records, interviewed previous owners, and pieced together the fragmented history of the house. Gap 2S. It was a story of sorrow and loss, of a family torn apart by tragedy, their grief leaving a scar on the very fabric of the home. Gap 2S. I learned that the shadowy figure was once a man named Daniel, a father who had lost his children in a horrific accident. His anguish had anchored him to this place, turning him into the guardian of its dark secrets. Gap 2S. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to the basement one last time. This time I brought with me not just my camera and flashlight, but also an offering, a bouquet of white lilies, a symbol of peace and remembrance. Gap 2S. As I descended the stairs, the air was still heavy with the house's oppressive energy, but it felt different now. Less malevolent, more sorrowful. I placed the lilies on the cold, damp floor and spoke softly. "Daniel, your story will not be forgotten. Your pain is acknowledged. Rest now." Gap 2S. The air seemed to lighten, the shadows receding slightly. I felt a presence, not threatening this time, but almost grateful. The temperature in the room rose and the oppressive weight lifted. Gap 2S. I knew that while the house would never be free of its past, it had found a semblance of peace. And so had I. Gap 2S. As I climbed the stairs for the final time, I felt a strange mix of relief and unease. The house was quieter now, its dark history no longer a looming threat but a somber memory. Gap 2S. I reflected on my journey, the terror I had faced, and the truths I had uncovered. It was a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be fully solved, but understood and respected. Gap 2S. The house stood as a testament to that, a silent guardian of its own secrets. I had come seeking answers, and I had found them, but with them came a responsibility to remember and honor the past. Gap 2S. As I walked away, I knew that the darkness might never fully disappear, but it could be acknowledged and understood, and sometimes that is enough. Gap 2S. The house remained a silent witness to its own history, and I knew that while I had faced the darkness, the true challenge was to live with the knowledge of what I had uncovered. Gap 2S. The story was not over, but it had found a resolution, a delicate balance between light and shadow, and in that balance I found my own peace.